Well, hello. Today is August 3rd, 2024, and this is episode 28 of Wes and Shelly Share. We are going to talk about summer book read and a little bit more. Hello, Shelly. How are you?
Great. And what a beautiful afternoon it has been. We went an adventure this morning. We haven't had one of our Saturday morning adventures in a really long time, but we went walking at Stevens Creek, which is one of our favorite places to go. And then we also went out to the Waxhaw Farmers Market. Wes has been working there a couple times for our friend's bakery. But today we went out to um, we purchased some vegetables, local vegetables, and some local beef. Wonderful steaks tonight. And when we got home, it started raining, and it's been raining ever since. Nice thunderstorms. So, just a beautiful evening.
All right. So we're continuing to publish this podcast on Spotify, but they have changed, and their app, which they had bought, was Anchor, no longer lets you make your podcast inside. So anyway, we're technically having to change some things up a little bit, but I've taken a few notes. Maybe we'll do halftime. I don't know. Maybe we won't. I'll have to go see if I can grab halftime off of, I don't know if where those recordings are. But we are going to talk about summer book reads. And one of the things, there's so many things I love about Shelley, but one thing I love about her is she is really into science fiction and she likes to read science fiction. She likes to watch science fiction. She's a Star Trek girl. I am a Star Wars guy. And I mean, I've enjoyed watching science fiction movies, but we're very different in that I love nonfiction. In fact, my 3 books are all nonfiction, and I'm gonna bet that well, I don't know, there's one book she's reading that I know that's pretty important. I don't know if she'll talk about it, but in general, she reads fiction. So, you wanna go first? You want me to go first with our books? We can kinda alternate.
Yeah, you go for it. We'll alternate, so it's not all three of me.
Okay, so, oh gosh, well, mine are all pretty heavy, um, and there's one that okay, well, I'll talk about Invisible Rulers by Renee DiResta. This is a 2024 book, which actually I've listened I've listened to 2 books this summer, and I'm into my 3rd, and I've listened to them all on Audible, and so I actually am reading I'm working on the same book. Well, I guess I did finish John Gleghorn's book probably this summer, Who's Our Pastor, and has a really outstanding book. We studied it in Sunday school. Um, but anyway, I find it wonderful to be able to listen to books, and so, Renee DiResta is a researcher of misinformation and disinformation, would kinda consider her a media literacy academic researcher. I think she works for the University of Washington for the Center for the Informed Public. She was with the Stanford Internet Observatory. She has been one of the academics that has literally been called before Congress and has had alt-right trolls called down on her to threaten her life and just try to make her life heck. And anyway, I think I got introduced to her by Alexander. When Alexander was either a sophomore or a junior in college, I got a chance to fly out. This was probably in like February. It snowed, I think, a foot the night that I got there and he picked me up at the airport and we, stayed in his basement, of the duplex where he was living. But at some point we had a conversation about YouTubers and he told me about Destin, who has the wonderful YouTube channel Smarter Every Day. This is like part of this theme is probably going to be like how we learned about these books or who recommended them or how we found out. So anyway, I've been watching Destin's channel, but a number of years ago, probably well, it would have been close to that time. He did a 3-part series on sort of the weaponization of social media and the way that YouTube and Facebook and Twitter had been really hijacked. And I ended up utilizing those videos in a workshop that I did for a group called Atlas, which is a association for technology leaders in independent schools. And it was like, what's it, something about the exo flood, preparing for the exo flood, filtering our feeds. Anyway, it's kind of an arcane title, but it was about media literacy. And that really is one of my main professional passions, along with oral history and teaching STEM and some other things. So anyway, I learned about Renee DiResta. She was interviewed by Destin in one of those videos. I'll try and find those and put that in the show notes. And you can link to it because they're pretty good. There've been, a lot of changes since it was probably like maybe 2019, maybe 2018, 2018. I was certainly, before graduation and in COVID and all that. So, Invisible Rulers is about the ways in which our information ecosystem has really changed dramatically with social media, but with mainstream media as well. The ways in which extremist voices, particularly, conservative, alt right, pro fascist voices, but also just horribly ugly. We're talking misogynistic, racist, and then just also cruel and just like if you're wondering what the heck is going on with media and social media and this information world, this is a very clarifying book. It is one of the best books I have ever read about our information environment, and I'm a big fan historically of Neil Postman and basically every book that Postman ever wrote. I really like Clay Shirky's book, Here Comes Everybody. That was probably in the mid 2000s. And I need to make a web page of, top books I recommend. And I would totally put Invisible Rulers by Renee DiResta. It is fantastic. Okay. So you're probably not going to hear more about nonfiction from Shelly because I bet she's going to tell us about fiction. What is one of your summer book reads that you have enjoyed reading this summer, Shelly?
Okay, I want to take offense. I am reading a nonfiction. It's in there. I have to force myself to read it, but I do. I consume it in pieces. All right, so I am guilty. I am the kind of reader. All of my bookshelf is in my Kindle, and I don't know, we have at least 1,000 books, hundreds of books in our Kindle library, and I reread books. I read books a lot because I miss them. I miss my characters, and I miss the storyline, and so this summer I have probably finished, I don't know, 6 books. I read a lot. But Sarah J. Moss, and I know if Rachel's listening and if Grace happens to listen, these are books that we all have in common. Trudy, I think, and Max also read these books. They are fantasy books. Sarah J. Moss is it's not a it's a young adult author, but it's very popular. It's Anyway, it is the Throne of Glass series. And, I have reread that, so I finished all of those. I love them. Oh, 5 of them, I think. So I finished all of those. I do love fantasy fiction. It's not a genre a lot of people my age like to read, therefore, I have find it hard to find a book club, because that's just fantasy fiction. Um, but the reason I like them, this is such a strong female character. She starts as an assassin. It's just an incredible world build. I also love J.R. Tolkien and I love these C.S. Lewis and I love these worlds of many characters and and so that's why I love Sarah J. Maas also because it's a mixture of human characters and fae characters and magic and it's unique and it's a very strong female character and she's powerful but she grows and it's a coming of age. She's young when all of this happened. She's experienced extreme trauma in her life and um it's I don't know. I really enjoy reading them and if you know, you know, because anybody that's read them will understand that. But I wouldn't say they're I think even you might even like it if you weren't a fiction fantasy read, but anyway, if you are into that, you will love those books. Yeah.
Well,
What?
well, let's walk.
Oh, okay. Well,
Did I
that was mine.
I'm gonna
So,
Okay, so I heard you mention fae, and I think that means something about a magician or elf or something. I don't
Mhm.
know. So tell me about this. Tell me. I want you to try and persuade me as a lover of J.R.R. Tolkien and the world. Like you said, we love together. We love Narnia. We love Middle Earth. Tell me a little bit about the fae and about sort of the magical side of this, and then try and persuade me that I need to read these.
okay. I suppose Fae are kind of like elves, but they're not. It is different. Fae, okay, so the characters the Fae is described in this book, and there's different. Um, they can switch between, they have like an animal form as well as it's not even a human form. This character is a mixture between human and Fae. Um, and so
Magical?
it's a little different. They do have magic, yes. In this case, the Fae all have kind of like superpowers. They can't do all things. So they all have like a superpower. I guess it's more like a superpower almost. And their animals are different and they can switch forms seamlessly, you know. And so, but it is part of the fairy fae kind of kingdom. So I guess it would be more of like a Narnia world rather than a Tolkien world, you know. So their magic is there is a magic in this book, but not everybody are magical beings. Like it's through word marks and kind of a magic within spells. And once you know that language, you can do that. But it's not like a mage. It's not like a wizard. So there's not really a wizard in that book. And so it's a magical world that has like little people and I mean, but the elves are not what it again, it's not a Tolkien elf, it's different. Fae are just a little bit different, but they're magical beings. Think Shakespeare, you know, fairies, Shakespeare, Midsummer's Night's Dream, magical creatures. Um, I guess that's how I would because I'm not really an expert in those either, but that's that world. Um, and but it's still very much of almost a medieval theme as well because the fighting they do was with swords and knives and, you know,
Not
so it's
gunpowder.
not gunpowder and bombs and things like that. So there's a lot of fighting, but it's hand to hand combat type things. And yes, she is an assassin, but she's almost an assassin with, um, and that's a whole different part of the story. Um, but she was trained that way from an extreme early age. She's like an assassin with a conscience. So it's not like she's just out to kill everybody. So, yet she has killed a lot of people. Anyway, it's very interesting.
Before we were married, I think Shelly like read a lot about serial killers and true
Oh
crime and
gosh, don't
stuff.
even go back there.
Well,
Don't
I'm just
give
saying
that impression.
that's interesting. That's interesting. All right. So we are so different in our book tastes. You're gonna like wonder like how we're married. Shelly says she wonders that all the time. No. Hey, opposites attract. Um, okay. So this book is called The New Superpower for Women by Steve Cardian. Now, if you're wondering why in the heck is Wes reading this book?
You have daughters and you have a
That's
wife.
right. I have daughters and I have a wife, and I'm interested in being a good protector. And, you know, maybe that's just what I need to say. I take my role as a protector and a provider seriously, and I'm working on those things and working to get better. And so I will say, and I shared this in my class because I didn't mention this. I've been teaching a 2-week course through the Media Education Lab this summer called Teaching the Conspiracies Part 2, and that's part of where the Renee DiResta book comes in because it's part of the curriculum that I've recommended for the folks that are in that class. But I told this story in that class and in some of those videos that a few years ago, I had to create a new YouTube channel because I was, I am into being prepared for emergencies. And there are rabbit holes, if you didn't know this, on YouTube. And so my main channel's feed just got like taken over. And so I created a separate channel that I will look at things, I'll watch videos that have to do with prepping, and some of these have to do with protection and security, etc. Okay. So there is a female YouTuber. Um, I should know her first name. Her channel is called what is it's like, not she protects herself. Anyway, her channel, she did, and I'll include the link to her video. She did a video on top books that she recommends that have to do with security and protection. And she recommended this book. And even though it is called For Women, the new superpower for women, Steve Cardian has extensive experience with, I'm pretty sure, the FBI. He's trained all kinds of people. And a big part of what it is discussing, not all it's situational awareness. Um, it is about security and just thinking. And it would be nice if we didn't have to think about this, right? And I don't know, and I'm not gonna be asking people how many folks have experienced some kind of trauma related to crime, but, the numbers of young women who are sexually assaulted in college, especially as freshmen, is absolutely shocking because these statistics are typically underreported, and it's something like 1 in 4 young women are going to experience some form of sexual assault by the time they leave college. It is an epidemic. It is horrific. It is something we should be absolutely just like doing stuff about, aware of, and it's like so quiet. One of the things this book, The New Superpower for Women, went into in great depth, greater depth than I've ever heard before, was date rape drugs. It is so scary how these kinds of drugs can be made and manufactured in people's houses with easily obtainable materials, and it's evidently not that hard, or you can buy them. They can be colorless and odorless, like literally every person, and this doesn't just pertain to young women, but it pertains to everybody at a party should never, ever leave their drink like unsupervised. Never go out to the dance floor and leave your drink. And just be careful even when you turn your head. I mean, the stories of people, putting these date rape drugs in a little Visine eyedropper or whatever, or a contact lens thing, or very innocuous, and they can drop just a little bit. And I mean, it's terrible. But as a father and as a teacher and as a citizen, I don't wanna be paranoid. I don't wanna be so hyper vigilant that I can't enjoy things and go out to eat and to dinner, but this was a really good book. It raised some really important issues. It has me thinking more about parking lots and the places where crime typically happens. It is so important that we try to not only maintain situational awareness, but that we are also very intentional about where we allow ourselves and our families to go. I'm thinking of Airbnbs. I have been guilty in the past of not scoping out a neighborhood and there was one that happened here this last spring that Shelly and I were going to go into. And the first one I had been to before, it was a super host. It was great. It was a cute neighborhood. Well, we couldn't stay there 2 nights. This was in Raleigh when we were up there for a conference. And this other one, I mean, it looked great from the pictures and all this. Man, it was not in a neighborhood that appeared to be safe, and Shelly was like, "I do not feel safe here," and we were gonna stay there, and we left, and we lost our money, and it was just but I think we who knows, maybe nothing would have happened, but trusting your spidey sense, that sense that says, "I don't have a good feeling about this," like, the new superpower for women, by the way, spoiler, by Steve Cardian, is to trust your spidey sense. And he believes, and he's worked for, again, like decades, like over 30 years, I think, and trained so many different people. Like, in getting some training when it comes to self-defense is really important, but also the superpower is encouraging women to trust themselves and trust when you have a feeling. And we just should not be naive. It would be nice if we didn't need to know about any of the crimes or the bad things that happen. But unfortunately, we do because they are around us. And so, anyway, this I could go on and on about that. But as you can see, it got me pretty passionate and fired up. And it was a good read, and I highly recommend it. And we will have all of the links to these books in our show notes. And we didn't say this earlier, but well, we always say it at the end. But you can go to shelleyfryer.com/podcast, and you can link to these. My wife is ready to talk.
My goodness, you can go on and on and on. I think it's interesting. Females have lived with I think I know our girls know these things, and I think a lot of young girls know these things. And I think it's
We'll
important to
see.
continue to share the message about safety, about watching the parking lot, about being aware of your surroundings, about, you know, covering your drink was not a thing when I was out clubbing, but girls know this now. I mean, they're this is not something new to young women. But I do think it is something that we need to talk about as families. So I do think I'm glad that you're passionate about that because it's something we always need to be reminded about. And these things are always changing. And so we need to keep up and be aware of the new drugs, the new ways of protecting yourself, it's a very important thing. And not just for females, for males as well. I mean, a lot of times the same types of things are happening to boys and nobody tends to talk about those. So, all right. So, I'm going to shift gears. I have another series that's a fantasy assassin type series that I finished. It was a book trilogy, and I read it. But I do want to talk about, well, it's called The Heir of Noveron. It's by Michael J. Sullivan. Um, I wanted, I will come back and talk about it because again, it's very similar to my fantasy motif. But I have branched out. So I went to visit my sister in Dallas this summer, and it was a wonderful time. My sister and um, I wouldn't say, I mean, we've always been close. For family, but we weren't really close when we were growing up in high school and things. But we've become close in our adulthood and we enjoy each other's company and we enjoy being together. So I went and spent a week with my sister. And while we were there, we watched a series called A Gentleman in Moscow. I think it's either Paramount. I think it's on Paramount. We don't have that here, so we watched it at my sister's house. It's by Amor Tolls, and I guess he's written other books as well. But wow, it takes place in the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, and which I really don't know a whole lot of that history. Um, but it's a beautifully written book, and I'm just starting it, and it's like reading fine literature. It's like drinking a fine bottle of wine. It's just the way he writes, has a poetry to it, it has an imagery to it. Wes and I were having a wonderful discussion this morning about the state of the world, politics type discussion. And it reminded me of this book and just ways that we have to adapt and learn to adapt, and not go into, I mean, to change when change is needed, but in a positive way for the good of all people. So it was that type of discussion, but I'm really enjoying The Gentleman in Moscow. Um,
The Gentleman in Moscow.
A Gentleman in Moscow. Yes, by Immortal. And he has several other books that I might consider reading if I enjoy this one. And then I have a book that I want to read that was been recommended by a couple women, Braiding Sweetgrass. I went through my, phase of Native American, and I still love Native American in New Mexico and um things like that. Um and so this book is written by a Native American botanist, and she talks about um I don't as it's described to me because I have not read it. I think it's going to be my next read. Again, nonfiction type books are hard for me. So I read them much slower because they require thinking and contemplation. And so I think that's why fiction I can just get lost in and read for hours. Nonfiction, I have to stop and think and process. Um, do you have another book? You talked a lot about things.
We're
Um,
gonna let that. That's
okay. Well, I'm just gonna finish mine because my book talks are a lot shorter than yours. Okay, I'll do one more after that. So anyway, yeah, A Gentleman in Moscow. I'm glad to go back. I've seen this TV series. I really enjoyed it. I'm really enjoying the book now.
okay. So we're gonna have halftime, and when we come back, we're gonna ask each other a couple questions about the books that we've shared so far. We're gonna each share another book, and then we do have a Wonderlink and Wonderlinks, but our Wonderlinks are really the big ones, and we're gonna share podcasts that we like. So that's what's coming up. Okay. It's halftime.
Hey there, North Carolina. Are you ready to experience a funnel cake revolution? It's time to meet Friar's Funnel Cakes, where tradition meets taste and deliciousness is just a bite away.
Created by two passionate school teachers, Friar's Funnel Cakes isn't just about satisfying your sweet tooth. It's a story of family, dedication, and a sprinkle of teacher's love in every bite.
Imagine a warm golden funnel cake dusted with the perfect amount of powdered sugar. And wait for it, you get to drizzle as much or as little chocolate syrup as your heart desires.
Got an event? Want to bring some joy to your gathering? Friar's Funnel Cakes is ready to hit the road and bring our sizzling sweet sensations to you.
Don't just take our word for it. Here's what one of our satisfied customers had to say.
Well, I thought I'd had a good funnel cake, but when I had one of them fries funnel cakes, it just set a new standard in taste and excellence. It's a game changer for sure.
So, what are you waiting for, Matthews? Head over to our Facebook page at facebook.com/friersfunnelcakes and let's make your next event a deliciously memorable one.
All right, welcome back after that wonderful, exciting halftime. So we're gonna ask questions of each other and then have a couple more books to share. My question is about The Gentleman in Moscow. That is fiction, but it's set in a historical period of time. I think the Russian Revolution was like 1907 to 1917 or 1910 to 1917, something like that. What what interests you about that, and what kind of I guess you talked a little bit about this today with the aristocracy and the way that guy's confined, but I don't know what kinds of thoughts have you had about Russia and about life, society, culture? Like what has been really engaging and has drawn you to want to read it and not just watch the movie version?
Um, a couple things come to mind with that. I do enjoy historical fiction. I do enjoy reading about history. Um, and so that in itself is intriguing. I don't know a whole lot about Russian history unless it maybe is the astronaut program. But I have seen Dr. Zhivago, and I have seen, I mean, which is, and my perception of Russian history. So again, this is my perception. So it's not based in studies or history, or and what's that other show that we watched that's a musical?
Oh, the one about Anna Karenina, or
Uh,
the one about, we saw the musical
yes,
in New
we
York.
saw it in New York.
Once well, it's the story of the Tsar, the
Yes,
Tsarina, who survives.
yes.
Then it was Sarah's favorite.
Okay. Wes was gonna think on that. Um, but yeah, so I love the scope and the beauty of it. There's a rich history there, and I think that comes into some of my fantasy books as well. There's castles and there's kings and there's you know and it's I think it's not a history the United States really has, and so it's nice to learn about some of that, um, and I think there's a beauty to that, but in this book, since it happens at the revolution, um, it's interesting because all of that is wiped out. I mean, people are killed and property is taken and things are burned and the lower class rises, and takes over. And in this book, it's interesting that this count survives, but he's under guard and imprisoned in a hotel, which is a luxury hotel, but he's still a prisoner. He can never leave. He cannot walk out the door. And he's pretty much stripped of being a count, yet he doesn't fight it. He just embraces it and realizes, and again, I'm only like 3 chapters into the book. Um, but based on the movie, he embraces it. He's a gentleman. He's a gentleman in Moscow, and he was raised and trained
Years.
that way. But now he's not. And now he works as a waiter and he knows all and his friends and so he's embraced that and learned from that. And it's about perspective. So his whole perspective was one way when he was in the
Or sorry.
aristocracy, and now it's different, and so it's almost like a whole new world is opened up to him, and the exact same thing is happening to these people as well, because here are all of these blue collar type workers who are now in control, who are now they want to do the fine dining. They want to choose wines. They want to, and they don't know how. And so there's this one point where this kind of like almost his handler asked him to teach him manners and teach him how to eat and teach him how to choose wines. And so it's almost like again, it's a whole new world is opened up to a different. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could be a mixture of aristocracy with the whatever, and we had this community of everyone is equal with equal opportunities. I don't know. It's a very interesting thought. And I think some people label that as communism, where everything is open to all people and everybody is equal. Again, I don't know a whole lot about communism, except that this is what happened in Russia, but it didn't work because it doesn't work. And so people aren't always taken care of. There isn't always enough for everybody. It's not always going to be equal. You always have the haves and the have nots. You always have people with a voice of power and people that are powerless. And so, and the book is artfully done. It makes me appreciate fine literature when somebody really has a gift with words and they craft. I mean, some people are really good world crafters. I think Sarah J. Moss is a really good world crafter, and so I enjoy it. This book, he has a his words are his art form, and so it's beautiful to read. Um, so anyway, that does that answer your question? All right, so now I have a question with you. You read the book about yeah, the superpowers for women. So, of those superpowers, and you have quite a few women in your life. What are the 3 top superpowers you think women need to be most aware of, in your opinion, of protecting themselves?
So the book is the new superpower for women. And he identifies one. I'll do the top three takeaways that I have for the book. Number one, it is to know that your superpower is your spidey sense. It is your innate sense of is this creepy? Do I feel like something's wrong? To trust that yourself and listen to that inner voice and trust it. The second thing would be don't to not this may sound bad, but don't assume that strangers you meet can be trusted. Even if you have had a class with them, even if you work with them, you know you know who they are, maybe you know their name, you don't know them. And so be super, super careful to not put yourself in a situation, especially where you are alone with someone and you could be, harmed and taken advantage of. It's so important that you drive your car places, that other people know where you are, and that especially as you're just barely starting to get to know someone, you meet in public places and you don't assume that someone is a nice guy or nice gal. I mean, more often this is men who are doing harmful things to women. And then the number third thing is get training. Get training because, and I'm not saying that this is all about firearms, although that can be part of the training, but self defense and security is a lot about mental and it's about situational awareness and it is about rehearsal. I think that we want to try and envision and rehearse in our minds how we're going to respond to things because then maybe our bodies will, right? When we are under stress and when we are frightened and when, unexpected things happen, literally, there are people who freeze and don't do anything. And part of the reason why we do training and we try to rehearse things is so that we are able to respond constructively. And I'm going to do a fourth thing, but he says this so clearly. You fight and you fight and you don't give up. If there is someone who is trying to get you to do something to harm you, to hurt you, to take things from you, yeah, to get you to do something you don't want to do, and they tell you to do something or not to do something, you probably should do that thing, the opposite of what they say, because that bad actor has already in their mind envisioned what they want. They're looking for a soft target, and what we don't want to be are soft targets. And so, anyway, I'm even thinking for Thanksgiving or Christmas, um, I don't know. There's maybe having a little class with somebody for an hour. I mean, it's not something that we tend to spend much time doing, but even a small amount of time with self defense training, working with somebody who knows her stuff or his stuff and can give some good advice and give us drills or things that we're going to rehearse in our minds. It's as much about mental preparation. I think it's more about mental preparation than it is about physical preparation. And both are important. So, okay, let's talk about our next books, and then we'll talk about podcasts a little bit. Do you have a third book?
Let's just go on to our podcast. Night. I mean,
I'm
you
gonna do
go
my
ahead.
third book. You should do your third book too.
Okay.
So my all my books are pretty serious. This is a book that a friend of mine recommended on Facebook because oh shoot, yeah, that's the one I'm reading. I'm reading a book by Bren Tannehill, which is about how kind of about how extremists have taken over the GOP or the Republican Party. And I had shared some quotations, and part of this is looking at the quote evangelical church and what people there's all kinds of folks saying all kinds of things today about God and about Jesus. And we got to be careful out there, folks. There's a lot of heresy. Well, this book is by Rachel Maddow, and it's called Prequel: An American Fight Against Fascism. And it's really about the 20s and 30s leading up to World War II in the 1940s. I am probably only about a quarter to a third of the way through the book. Again, I'm listening to it on Audible. But like, I didn't know, oh gosh, can I even say his name? In Louisiana, the populist, governor, Huey Long, think maybe I had heard my grandmother talk about them. My mom was born in Shreveport. My grandmother, lived most of her life in Louisiana before she got married. Oh my gosh, what a crook and a criminal, but what a charismatic leader he was. And oh my gosh, a mob boss to the maximum, but so charismatic. And the history of fascism on this planet, in the world, is really important to study and understand the roles of charismatic people. But then it's not just about, the soldiers who landed on the beaches of Normandy and the, Marines that, took Iwo Jima and, all the Marshall Islands and all the islands that, Okinawa that, part of the island hopping campaign to reach Japan and be able to eventually end the war with the bomb. Like, all of those heroic and important acts and the sacrifices that were made by those servicemen is a important part of the fight against fascism. But there are really important aspects on the domestic front here in the United States. And so this book is a real eye opener. It's by Rachel Maddow, and it's called Prequel: An American Fight Against Fascism. And I wish these topics were not relevant, but they are. So it's a good book. Your third book.
Well, it's interesting. You're talking about books, and I'm doing book series, you know. Um, so I think, so, well, it's just another fantasy assassin book. But what I think I love about it, it's a 3-book series, and it is an elf book. But in this case, in this book, the elves are have been they're the I think the comparison is they used to be mighty, and now they're not. And now they're treated as outcasts. They're used as slaves. They're not allowed in the towns, and they're called the mirror. It's called the heir of Novaron, and it's funny. So I came to this book, and I had forgotten that there's I guess a prequel. There's another series that I've read that sets up the pre-world. Anyway, um, so in this book, it's the church has taken over and wants to take over, and so kingdom by kingdom is being overrun, and so as the kingdoms fight for their kingdom and I guess their sovereignty or whatever, so it comes in here. So you have two thieves that come together who steal things, but one is a protector and they work together, and it's um but yet it has a much greater purpose. And so at the end of so you have a lot of relationship building and trust building, and the assassin who's never had a friend ever, you find out he's a mirror, which means he's part elf and part human. And so they're people he just doesn't have the elf features, and so many knows that, but he has um a lot of the abilities that an elf would have, and which make him a great thief and assassin. But what I like about the book is the relationship between these two people and the relationship that they build and trust that they build over time. And in the end, you find out what that whole relationship was about. It is a book about magic, and there is a magic element to it, and it has wizards who have certain powers, and and it has a strong female characters. I like these books that I read with the strong female characters, and she's a leader. She's a princess, but she's also a leader. And people don't expect that because in that world it's not typical. So she's different because I don't know. Um but I think it's interesting because of the in this world there is a religion, and the religion is trying to take over, and they all believe in the Noveron, the Church of Noveron, and I don't know, there's some parallels that make it very interesting. It's not true, it's fantasy fiction, but it's interesting when you start looking at relationships and you're looking at things from different perspectives, whether it's about enslaved people and why they're enslaved and why they're treated differently and why they're hated. It's about religious leaders and the power that they have and the church that they create and the way that they force everybody to believe what they believe. It's about governance and kingdoms that are fighting for their people, but fighting for their kingdom. But it's also about um, knights and chivalry and what chivalry should be, but isn't always. So there's a chivalry in it, and uh, multi-layered. But I think if you're a reader in fantasy fiction, it's definitely a book. Series, an alternative to a different world. It's got a good sense of magic. It's good world building. Um, and it has strong positive characters. Um, so I've really enjoyed reading that too. It's a 3-book series. But there's also, I'd have to go back and look at it, a parallel series that is like takes place 3,000 years prior to that. So yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, I remember this world, but it's very much this future world. So anyway, oh, I think I like that because it's my way and my form of escape. Reading is an escape for me. And so rather than just binge watching, zoo shows or animal vet shows, you know, yeah, whatever. So I read.
All right. So when we wrap up our episodes, we will typically do a Wanderlink and a Wonderlink. But tonight we are going to kind of both reflect on our same Wonderlink that we experienced out in Florida.
And let's not go into details with these podcasts.
No, we got to do some details.
Little detail. And then we're going to do the Wonderlink Switcher podcast. It's just a really short, fine, do a quick elevator
Nobody's
pitch.
going to even listen to elevator pitch.
Right. No, a quick little
quick
elevator
pitch,
pitch.
yeah.
Yeah. Because look, as I'm convinced of this, when we serve as filters for each other, there's so many books to read. There's so many podcasts to listen to. If these are the top 3 podcasts that Shelly likes and the top 3 that Wes like, I mean, maybe there's one that you're gonna like, when we're filtering for each other. Okay. Our Wanderlink is the Kennedy Space Center
Oh, yeah.
because we had a wonderful opportunity. Thanks really, dude. If our school had not come up with the money to pay for my registration and travel, it just wouldn't have happened. But we went to the space conference, which is the Spaceport Area Conference for Educators, acronym SPACE. And like SEEK, which is the Space Exploration Educators Conference that happens at the Johnson Space Center in Houston in February. This one happens in the summer and is at the Kennedy Space Center by Cape Canaveral. So, favorite thing about this Wanderlink, it was probably for me touring the Vehicle Assembly Building, the VAB. This is the building at Cape Canaveral where all of the space vehicles from the Saturn V on, all the space shuttles, they've all been put together. Artemis 1. Artemis 2 is inside right now, and we were fortunate to be there in between the missions, and so we got to see this. The crawler, it's the same one they used in the 60s that takes the spacecraft out to the launch pad. Just lots and lots of history. And of course, we got to see a Falcon 9 rocket actually launch. We were 12 miles away in our hotel. So Anyway, am I stealing all your thunder?
Yeah, but I'm
Okay, but you tell it
in
anyway.
my viewpoint
That's
and
right.
from my perspective.
That's from your perspective. We need some good voices. Here, you need to do yours. Do
No.
it in Southern voice. Y'all tell me what your favorite thing was about that.
So, yes, going to Kennedy Space Center was definitely a dream of mine. Yes, for educational purposes, I go because I love to talk about space um and teach kids about space because they don't know enough about it. And what's going on in space education. So space education is a big passion of mine. So going to Seek and going to Kennedy Space Center was a big dream of mine. I realized as much as I love space, I don't have a lot of rocket knowledge. And so I'm going to learn about rockets. And when I start my Lego club that has a space theme, of course, we're going to talk about rockets. I think that's the first thing we're going to do, learn about rockets. So, yes, I think seeing a rocket launch was so powerful. And I mean, we're so close to Florida and we need to go and experience that again. And luckily, right now, rockets are taking off quite often. And so, um, I definitely loved that. Um, Something else I really liked at Kennedy. So we went to the one in Houston, which was wonderful. The one, um, this one was I don't say a little more low key, but it weren't as many people. It wasn't as much flashy because, the astronauts aren't there. It's more about the rockets and launches and engineers and things like that. So it's different. Each space center has its thing that they do. Um, Houston has astronauts, and so that makes it really, yeah, sexy. But what I liked about this one is their educational space. They had classroom spaces and they had like
That's neat.
I got to go into one of their educational spaces and do a coding thing with these giant moon maps. It's a lesson that I had used these same moon maps in a lesson when we were our last lesson in 5th grade was building lunar landers and designing lunar. It was a design project that we did, and we used these maps to choose our landing site on the South Pole because that's where Artemis 3 is going to land. And so, um, that we got to use that with robots, which, oh, I wish I had a set of robots that I could work with kids. That's kind of my dream thing right now. If anybody wants to invest in space education and has some money that they want to um, make available to teachers to buy her own set of robots for education, that would be amazing. Um, but we got to use that. But they had a whole room filled with regolith, which is the samples. It was samples of moon dust. And so we worked with these robots and then we got to run our code inside this room where the engineer had to go in full PVU protective um coverings and so to actually do mask and whatever. It was amazing. So I think space education and I might even look at going to space camp. I know there is a camp and that talks about geology, which again is not something that I really have ever known about, but there's some really cool space geology and studies that are being done and people working on that, both the geology of the moon as well as the geology on Mars, as well as geology on some of these asteroids, because it's going to be critical to life in space and our experiences in space. And so that's going to be really important. So I really enjoyed our time there. It was nice to be able to drive. I mean, just the drive through South Carolina and Florida and all the different places was a journey in itself. And we like to take things slow and stop and go to a little museum or a local restaurant. And so it was a wonderful time. So yes, our wander was was educational and entertaining as well. And so I really like that. All right. So now we're going to transition to our podcasts that we're listening to. And I just bullet notes because this is already getting pretty long. So I have a couple podcasts that are my favorites. I don't know if I've talked about them on this. One of them is called In Your Mama's Kitchen. It's produced by Higher Ground It is hosted by Michelle Norris, who is NPR. She does several NPR shows like All Things Considered, The Washington Post, Higher Ground, which is a company that Barack and Michelle Obama's media company. And so anyway, but what I love about it is Michelle Norris talks to, gosh, all kinds of people about their mama's kitchen and about what they saw there, what happened in their kitchen, what kind of foods were cooked in their kitchen, and what were the traditions. So it's like, you know, so much happens in the kitchen. Um, and in some kitchens, nobody ever cooked in, but still it was a gathering place, or in one kitchen, it was had all kinds of expensive artwork, and so everybody's kitchen is a little different, and it plays an important part in a family, and it plays an important part in children's lives. And so, In Your Mama's Kitchen is one that I really enjoy.
Okay, we'll go back and forth, and I'll try not to talk too long. Because we've each picked 3 podcasts we like. Hard Fork. Hard Fork is hosted by Casey Newton and Kevin Roos of the New York Times. I listen to this podcast right now basically every single week. They are covering highlights in the tech news with a big focus on artificial intelligence, and they are so I mean, they have a good dynamic between them. Podcasts are usually about 20 or 30 minutes long. They'll usually have a guest. Well, they'll interview them, but it, gosh, artificial intelligence, folks, I'm telling you, it is a game changer. And it is right now already and will, I believe, change basically every single just lost did we lose power? We sure did. And it just popped back on. Ooh, that's weird. Huh. Um, yeah, good thing we're just recording on our phone. Um, it's a game changer. So Hard Fork, New York Times, awesome.
All right. My other one, no mystery. I'm constantly working on my habits of health. One thing that I've really been working on this past year is um, being introspective, working on health by getting good exercise and meditating and having quiet time. And one podcast that I like to listen to while I walk is Oprah's Super Soul, and it's about health stories. And I like how Oprah has the ability to dig into people's why. And she interviews a lot of interesting people. Some of them famous, some of them authors, some of them, wide variety, um, actors. And and I like the way that she listened, and it is about people's journeys to be more self-aware, um, or I hesitate to say a spiritual journey because everybody's journey is a little bit different. But I love the way that she discovers and connects with people, and um and I always learn something, and it gives me something to think about. So Oprah's Super Soul, just wonderful conversations, and digging in deeper into um how people are discovering themselves and discovering the world around them. And so it's just a great one to listen to as I walk, and I really enjoyed that one.
Okay, my second one is actually the only podcast creator that I pay for. It's like $5, and maybe I don't know. I made a list of all the subscriptions we have, and I haven't shown it to Shelly. She's probably gonna.
I think I'm gonna make him cancel a few.
Yes, I think
But we're gonna talk about them.
Okay, so this is called Straight White American Jesus. It is by Brad Onishi, who is a professor, I think, at UC Berkeley. And there was a particular episode about ex-evangelicals that was really good. It was by a person whose name I'm not going to remember, who wrote a book about being an ex-evangelical. If you at all are if you are a Christian, if you're attuned to Christian politics, you probably know that there is a bit of conflict over the evangelical movement and politics and a lot of things. And so, anyway, Onishi is a theologian. He went to seminary. I think he has spent some time. I don't know if he's Episcopal. I don't actually know his. I don't fully know his theology and know his entire story. I've really only been listening to this podcast probably for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. But the fact that it's the only one that I have paid for because I've wanted the bonus features and the extended versions. He also had one that was excellent that was about not trying to avoid the idolatry of biblical inerrancy. And I will not do it justice in this like short little statement, but basically for people who proclaim and believe that the Bible is inerrant, sometimes that is used as a bludgeon and a weapon, and it becomes something that people put on a pedestal and literally make into an idol and worship. And as he points out, there were people who were Christians before the New Testament was written down, right? And so yes, the Bible, I believe, is the inspired word of God and has so much value, but we need to be careful. And, people use the Bible to, justify slavery in the United States and all kinds of things. So, Straight White American Jesus, Brad Onishi, it's my second one, and it's awesome.
All right. My last and third won't surprise you. It is a space podcast. It's one that I think is appropriate for anybody who wants to learn more about space in bite sized chunks in ways that you can absolutely understand. It's called Are We There Yet? It's by Brendan Byrne. So it is a National Public Radio podcast. And he covers and interviews scientists and what's going on in current space right now. And they post once a week. And so I learned so much about um, not only astronauts, but the space program and what's going on currently and what's being studied. Today, I was listening to um, a professor from Florida who's going to be going up in Blue Origin and performing his own space experiments. He's been doing space experiments and getting them ready for the last 10 or 15 years. And now he's finally getting the opportunity because now we have people that aren't astronauts going into space. And so he is getting the opportunity to go into space to perform his own space experiments. And it was really interesting, I think in low Earth orbit. But and doing biology experiments on how space and microgravity affects cells. And so rather than having to train and trust other people to do the experiments like on the space station and astronauts, just being able to do your own experiments is huge. And so I was just listening and learning about that today. And it's definitely something that I would recommend to, students, I would say upper elementary. It would be appropriate for younger children. I just don't know if they would understand it as much, but definitely upper elementary through adults. If you just want to know what's currently going on in space, what are exciting things, what are astronauts, what are different programs? I mean, what is the engineering? What are the projects that people are working on? Um, Not just NASA, but all the other as well. So definitely a great podcast if you just want to stay current with current space news.
Okay, and my last one is Angry Planet. This one I've been listening to for a long time, and I've thought about subscribing to it. They have a variety of different guests. Many times they're authors. They're talking about conflict, international affairs. Many times it does touch on, social media, media literacy. I'm trying to think of what they used to be. Was it called something about War College? Um, but anyway, they rebranded as Angry Planet. But it's just fantastic, and I listen to it's not every week, but I listen to that very, very frequently, along with a whole lot of others. So I'll include a list. In addition to like listing all the subscriptions that are currently paying for, because I think that's a helpful thing not only to us for us to track, but like if something is worth paying for, like that might be worth paying attention to. And again, how are we filters for each other? How do we discover things? We've shared a heck of a lot. And in fact, I think I'm going to transcribe this and get AI to extract our links for me to at least a draft of those. And anyway, I'll put the link to my relatively current podcast subscriptions because I periodically export most of those and share them. So hopefully you have stayed with us. If you have, reach out, let us know. Tell us that you have 75 degrees. So that's why that happens. I have this what kind of light is that? A strip light in the sunroom in the back. And I have it set so that when in the morning the temperature hits 75 degrees, it comes on and turns red. So we've had cooler temperatures, and I guess it's warming up again because it just turned red. Maybe that's the signal that we're done. So we've got to wrap up, Shelly. And if people want to link to this, link to us, connect with us, you can go to shellyfryer.com/podcast. And as long as I'm not having trouble with my web server, that should be accessible. But hopefully you can find this anywhere your podcasts are curated. We invite you to like and rate the podcast. Hopefully give it 5 stars. Tell other people about it. We don't have that many subscribers now. We've got some important people in our lives that are listening, and there's multiple reasons for us doing this, but we enjoy sharing, and it's always good to get feedback and know that people are listening. So we got to do our outro, Shelly. It is to go outside,
Have adventures.
stay curious, and keep exploring. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay.
Wes and Shelly Share is a weekly podcast recorded and published on Sundays by Wesley and Shelly Fryer of Matthews, North Carolina. Learn more and find links to connect on social media to Wes and Shelly by visiting shellyfryer.com/podcast. Content on this podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Only 3.0 license. The Wes and Shelly Share podcast is recorded and published with Anchor and distributed on all major podcast channels, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and more. Please share our show on social media and tell others about us. Let us know on Facebook or via other means what you like about the show, that you're listening, and if you have any suggestions for future episodes. Stay curious, go outside, and keep exploring.